What's up, my brothers and sisters? Welcome to the Fireground Fitness Podcast, where we talk about all things pertaining to life on and off the fireground. The views and the opinions expressed are those of your host and our guest. Today, we're sitting down with Fire Chief Aaron Culwell of the Will Rogers Airport Fire Department, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. We met up in Tulsa while we were at the IFSTA conference, sat down, chatted about his experiences in the Air Force, his experiences in the fire service, and so much more. Hope you enjoy. Aaron, thanks, man, for sitting down and rapping with me. I'm excited to have an opportunity to chat with you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. It's so I want to hear, you are a fire chief, which when I say those words, you're going to make, this might be funny to you, maybe, I don't know. It makes me laugh because you have a baby face. You look so young to me. Do you get that a lot?
All the time. That's why I'm growing the mustache, so hopefully kind of counteract
to give you some credibility, you got to grow that thing.
Get the mustache.
So, Chief, I want to talk to you a little bit about your journey, some of the things that you've done to get to this point in your life. And there's been some, you and I, before we hit record, we were talking about some of the events in our lives that shape who we are. And on our walk over here, as we were coming to sit down, we were talking a little bit about your time in the Air Force and the service that you've done there. And so I want to talk about all that stuff. So take me back. You grew up in where'd you grow up?
Norman, Oklahoma.
Norman, Oklahoma. What was that like?
Yes, sir. Man, it was that's Sooner Nation right there. OU, Boomer Sooner, all day long. I remember being a little kid, growing up in the early '90s. So I'm not that young, right? Early '90s. So we had, my dad grew up in the '80s, OU football, right? Big time OU football. And so when I was a little kid, my dad didn't understand it because we could just walk into the OU stadium because they had terrible football coaches. But down there in Norman, OU football was life. And that's kind of how we grew up, was looking forward to every Saturday in the fall and baseball games in the spring. And my dad, I love my family to death, and they had a great, kind of a pretty successful commercial cabinet company. Right, they did all the millwork. They did bid jobs on contracted government work, and from an early age, my father taught me how to work, how to be a laborer, how to hit the grindstone, as you would.
Yeah.
And I started working in the summers about age 13, working with my mother and father at the wood shop and cleaning out sawdust, sweeping floors, occasionally getting to help out building a cabinet by hitting a hammer on a nail, stuff like that.
Yeah, that was probably a pretty expensive, high-risk move for your dad to let a kiddo start swinging hammers around the cabinets.
Oh, yeah, I tore all sorts of stuff up, right? I didn't know what
costing him money.
Sure. But I learned a lot, and, in those cabinet shops, it's, like you see here in Oklahoma right now, it's 100 degrees outside in the summertime, and we didn't have air conditioning, and you're covered in sawdust and sweat and sweeping the floors. And when that got cleaned up, you walk down to the next saw, and the saw's already spit a bunch of sawdust off, and sweep that up, and then turn around. The saw you just cleaned up is all dirty. You got to go clean that again. And it was never-ending work for me back when I was 13 years old.
What did you learn from that? Because clearly it was an impression to you.
Yes. So my father, even to this day, he's pretty much retired and thinking about just hanging out in the mountains all the time. But he still wakes up at about 4 o'clock in the morning every single day.
Okay, hold on, pause real quick. What mountains? Because my limited experience in Oklahoma has been here in Tulsa, and the only tall thing around here is the skyscrapers. I haven't seen anything taller than that. There's no mountains.
Nothing in the state of Oklahoma. My dad and my mom, they love Colorado.
Okay.
And I have a little bitty brother. I say little bitty. He's not little bitty. He's 30. So, but little bitty for me, and he's in the Air Force over there in Colorado. He does his job over there, and I think he's actually going to get stationed maybe Florida or something, but they go visit him quite a bit in Colorado, and those are the real mountains. Right?
Okay. Yeah. I get that. That's one of my favorite spaces, is to get up into southern Colorado and kind of eastern Colorado too. It's so beautiful up there.
Oh my goodness.
Do your folks have a place up there?
No, they actually are looking.
Okay.
My father recently kind of got done with retirement, so he's looking, but he still wakes up at 4 in the morning, and he gets up, he reads his book, very diligent, very disciplined in his own personal growth. And, he hasn't gone to school since college, over 30 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And he always is reading. He's always developing himself. Even as a cabinet maker, the man is reading and studying on how to be a better man. And that, to me, spoke beyond words on how I've grown to be who I am today.
Yeah.
Is learning from his example, right? So not only how to work hard, but how to stay driven and focused.
Mm-hmm.
And he's definitely a family man.
Yeah.
You know, he did it all for us, and that was I'm very blessed, very, very blessed.
Yeah. No, what an amazing example, you know, that he's setting for all of us, but for you in particular, right? Watching him labor that way and then, you know, be studious and, you know, applying those lessons in life, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You know, that's awesome. What's one thing that you look back on, like a specific thing that maybe he taught you that you always resonate on?
Always resonate on. I remember it was one of the summer days. You know, for me, I was probably 14, 15 years old. In my mind, my father, his brothers, his dad, his grandfather, they've owned this cabinet shop for decades. You know, it's a third generation family business. And I think at that age, I was just thinking and halfway expecting to run the business someday. And I remember it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I mean, the sun's not up yet. I'm a 15-year-old kid that I don't want to go to work, right? I mean, it's not what I want to do. But my dad's making me go to work, and I'm driving up there, and I'm like, Dad, how come I can't just do what you do and sit in your office? You know, I want to learn how to do the paperwork side. I don't want to sweep the floors.
I need to learn how to run this joint.
Yeah, how am I supposed to run it and take it over someday? And my dad says, Aaron, you're never going to work here.
Okay.
And he said, Aaron, you're never going to work here. You know, this is not the life for you. I don't want you to be here. You're going to have to make your own way. It's going to be hard, and you're going to have to work hard. But this is not going to be a business I'm just going to give to you, right? And I remember that conversation on my way up. It's like, wow, I'm busting my tail, doing all this stuff, working for my father and my family, and he wants me to have something different, something better. He's instilling me these skills to take it elsewhere, right? And that conversation, I remember, I'll never forget it. You know, at that point, I was like, and at that moment, I'm like, well, how come I can't just sit in the office with the air conditioning instead of having to be out here sweeping the hot floors, right? But looking back on it, that's probably one of the strongest lessons he'd ever taught me, because at that point, I never had in my mind that I'm going to be given this business. At that point, and he's always offered it. You know, there was times in my adult life where I was down on my luck or I needed a little bit of side job. He'd always let me come back and work for him. But with never the mind or the intention that, hey, I'm going to let you have this cabinet company. Right? You're never going to be a millwork guy. I'm not ever going to just give it to you. Now, if you want to earn it, you can earn it. But you're going to earn it. This is not something you're just going to get. And I think that was the message he was trying to send me, and that was the message that I received even at that young age of 14, 15.
Yeah.
Right? And so at that point, as I kind of got older in high school, you know, I tried to think about what I wanted to do. I started thinking about, you know, architecture or engineering as far as my college studies go. Decided to go to Southeastern Oklahoma State University in Durant. It's about a 2-hour drive from Norman, Oklahoma, and studied business there. And then after that, so I was paying for college on my own. I'm not smart enough to get the scholarships. I didn't play sports to get the scholarships, right? Mom and dad didn't pay for it. And I didn't want the student loans. You know, I busted my tail, and, you know, month to month I'm paying my college tuition. My dad and mom helped me out with car insurance and helped me out with the dorm room stuff a little bit here and there, and fantastic helping me out with that. But when it came down to it, I ran out of money. So I got about 2 years into college, and now I'm a 21, 22-year-old kid, and I'm out of money. So I had to move back home and move back home for a little bit, and I was just going to work a couple semesters at Lowe's to kind of make up some money.
Build the coffers back up.
Get back into college.
Yeah.
Well, at Lowe's, I was working and did a good enough job, taking my skills that I'd learned from a cabinet company, and ended up kind of moving up into like management positions. So I started working into management positions and kind of started enjoying it. So between the ages of 21, 22, 23, by the age of 23, I kind of thought that was going to be my career. Well, I'm a firm believer in faith, and I'm a firm believer in kind of my own convictions and stuff. Well, one day, and this is where I fully believe, and I'm a true believer that every single person in our industry, the fire service industry, it's a calling. Whether they believe it or not, I believe everybody that works in our business is a calling. Now, you might not have had the same messages I got, and I might have not got the same messages you got, but there was one day in that Lowe's that a gentleman walked up, and I'm stocking the shelf or whatever, and he said, "Hey, aren't you a fireman?" I'm like, "No, I'm not a fireman." Right? Well, about an hour later, a little lady walks around the corner. "Hey, you look like my friend. He's a fireman." I'm like, No, I'm not a fireman. Well, I had two other people come up that day.
Do you not see my Lowe's apron?
Yeah. I'm working at Lowe's, right? I had two more people that day tell me I'm a fireman. Like, "You look like a fireman. You look like a buddy who's a fireman. Hey, I think you're the volunteer. Didn't you come to my house fire? You look like a fireman." It was the strangest thing. Well, later that day, on my lunch break, I was going to just go down the street to Taco Bell. Well, on my way to Taco Bell, I don't know why. I don't know how. I don't understand how I got there. But I went to the Taco Bell about 8 miles away. There's a Taco Bell 3 blocks from the Lowe's I was working at. I don't know how I got there, but I was just cruising in my own mind or whatever. And I got to this other Taco Bell, parked. I'm like, I don't know why I'm over here on this side of town, wasting my lunch hour. Walk inside, sit down, and standing right there is one of my friend's dad, Danny Glover. And not Danny Glover, what is it? Mr. Glover, Matt Glover's father. And he was a Norman fireman. And I stood in line right behind him. He's catching up with me. I'm catching up with him. We sit down, had lunch. I didn't know he was there. He just happened to be there. And he just calmly asked, "Have you ever thought about being a fireman?" Right? And I was like, "Well, now I am." Right? I don't know. I guess
After the day I've had.
Yeah. How if I was going to be a fireman, how would I be a fireman? That was my next question.
Yeah.
Like, you're the one who knows how to do it. You're a fire captain here in the city of Norman, Oklahoma, my hometown. How do I be a fireman? And he said, "Well, first you got to get your EMT." I was like, "Well, when can I get my EMT?" He's like, "I don't know. Go try to OCCC, which is a little college up north." So I went up to Oklahoma City Community College that afternoon after I got off work, about 3 o'clock. The counselors were still open. I walked in and said, "Hey, I was told I need to come and get EMT. When's the next class, or how does it work, or what does EMT even do?" I don't know.
What's that even mean? I was given this acronym.
Yeah, and they said, "Oh, we have a class starting this Monday, and we actually have 2 slots available. Would you like to go?" I said, "Well, what are the hours?" I was thinking, like 7 o'clock at night for 1 hour every Tuesday or something like that. It's like, "No, it's 8-week class, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I'm like,
That's a pretty big commitment.
Yeah. I was like, so I'd have to go part-time at my job at Lowe's. So I said, "Well, sign me up. Sign me up." And I had enough money to saved up with kind of what I'd been doing at Lowe's to go part-time. And I still got to work weekends and afternoons, and took my EMT. And so this was all happened. This was the summer. So it was May, right after the first summer semester right there. So I took my class. I graduated with my EMT, passed the National Registry. It turns out to be probably about the end of July, right at the beginning of August, when I passed my National Registry. And same thing, I went back to work at Lowe's, and 3 people the next day said, "Hey, you ever been in the Air Force? You look like my buddy in the Air Force." "I've never seen you. You look like the guy I saw you in the Air Force." Like, you got to be kidding me, right? This is not a real thing. So right then, I drove down the street, Air Force recruiter, walked in, said, "Hey, I'm supposed to be in the Air Force." Like, I don't know how to do this. I guess
customers at Lowe's are writing my life script.
Yeah, I remember driving. There's a huge billboard that says, "Do you want to join the Air Force?" Right? It was on my way to the Lowe's recruiting, or the Air Force recruiting station. So to me, and I'm not saying anything else, but August 28th is the day I left for the Air Force. When it comes to my life story and how I got to be a fireman, I don't ever believe it was a choice for me. It was a calling. I was just going to go to Lowe's, work there for a little while, save some money, go get my business degree, and then I wouldn't have had a plan one on what I was going to do with my life. But in May of 2008, next thing I know, I was in the Air Force with an EMT certificate in August 2008. And I ended up going to the Air Force, did the fireman stuff, came back, worked at Tinker for a little while.
So when you went into the recruiter, did you say, "Hey, I'm supposed to be in the Air Force and I'm supposed to be a firefighter?
So I walked in. I was like, hey, do you have Air Force firefighting? Is that even a thing? And
Right.
he was like, yeah, it absolutely is a thing. I was
Okay.
like, well, can you get me on the fire department? He said, no, we don't have any slots. And I was
Can I
like,
say,
well,
I bet it's pretty thin.
he said, no, we don't have any slots. And I was like, okay, well, thanks. And he's like, can I get your number? I'm like, sure. I'm like, here's my number. 2 days later, called me and says, you got a slot. And you leave August 28th.
Jeez.
So between then and there, I had to do all the MEP stuff and go
right.
do all the doctor's visits and fill out some paperwork. But
Yeah.
I was on a plane to San Antonio, Texas, August 28th.
Nice.
Yeah.
So was that did you go in as active duty?
No, I did a reservist.
Okay.
I was a reservist from the start. Yeah. I went down and did tech school at Goodfellow Air Force Base. So I did 6 weeks of basic, San Antonio, Lackland. And then it's like 3.5, 4 months at Goodfellow Air Force Base. Then I came out, worked at Tinker for about a year. And then I applied and got a job at Will Rogers Fire Department, the ARF station here in Oklahoma City. So I started there and worked my way up there and started working through the ranks at the 507th at the unit in Tinker Air Force Base. And as I was growing, I just got to be hungry for the industry.
Yeah.
You know.
So tell me a little bit about, because I don't know much about. I've heard a little bit here and there, but tell me what work is like as an Air Force firefighter. What does it look like? What is some of the responsibility? What's the mission look like?
So as an Air Force firefighter, the missions are very, very unique. And active duty, reservist, guard, they're all very similar at like the base functions, right? You have fire engines, you have like your daily duties, you have training every single day, you have crash trucks, you have tankers, there's brush trucks. Every installation is very, very unique. You know, Tinker Air Force Base has the 2 largest buildings in the Department of Defense. And there's been a massive fire at Tinker Air Force Base back in the 80s in the largest building at the Department of Defense at that point in time. One of them is the old GM plant, which both of these buildings are bigger than the Pentagon. And the Pentagon's massive as far as square footage.
Right.
But Tinker Air Force Base is the depot for a lot of jet engines, jet parts, fighter planes, bombers. They do a lot of depot work. And so the population of Tinker Air Force Base during the work hours is, I don't know the numbers, but it's exponential. Like it is a massive, massive place with thousands of workers on there, not including the active duty and not including the civilians and their families and whoever else is there, the retirees who are still living on the installation. But that's what Tinker Air Force Base's mission is. The Department of Defense at Fort Sill.
So to be clear, though, like they're running fire, like structure fire, crash rescue, as well as, and then EMS as well.
Wildland, a lot of installations run EMS. Some even run their own ambulance in some locations. So some of them have an ALS requirement. There's certain overseas contracts, certain overseas installations that run ALS ambulances from the fire department.
So to be clear, your EMT came in handy.
Yeah, it worked out. It worked out right at the start. Yeah. And so as I got into the 507th, we started going TDYs, and I was offering up, myself for a lot of the volunteer TDYs, deployments, stuff like that. Really helped me kind of grow in my Air Force career, and I looked for every opportunity to learn. And that to me, if I can ever, a young fireman, right, they all have a spark. There's always a reason for them to start that career. Mine was a calling. I didn't even know what a fireman does when I started. I quickly found out when I joined the Air Force, or I quickly found out when I got in my clinicals, right, and actually got to see and deal with, what a first responder does.
Yeah.
And I remember the specific call that I went on. It was rollover ejection. It was my very first clinical ever as an EMT, right? I mean, I'm not even sure I want to do this career. And this was the day I remember I am going to be a first responder, right? This is where I knew is like all those things at Lowe's, that's a calling. And I'm on it. And I'm with you, God. So at that point, it was a rollover ejection. The guy wasn't going to make it. But my crew chief, my supervisor who came out on scene, I did this clinical in at IFSTA right there on the mile of cars in Norman. And this rollover ejection, horrific crash. One person, that's all he was. He was just kind of been out drinking a little bit too much. I'm over there doing compressions, and I'm a clinical first day on the job ever, and I'm doing compressions. And I remember when
CPR cert still in your pocket.
it's not. It's brand new. Yeah, this month, right, or whatever it was. And I remember when the paramedic at the head, he decompressed the chest, both lungs. And as I was pushing down, because he was rollover ejection and he hit the guardrail and the car kind of rolled on him a little bit. As I pushed down, stuff was squirting up on me, on my arms, the typical stuff. And I remember doing it, and I'm like, I can't stop. This is, I'm going to try to save this guy's life. That's my job, right? Yeah. I am here. And that in my mind, Kurt Vonnegut said it best when he says, when you're out on the edge, you see all sorts of things. Yeah. And at that point, I remember at that point thinking, I'm here to do this job, and I have a calling to be on the edge. I need to be on the edge of society so that other people don't have to see this or be a part of this. Or maybe I can make a difference in at least one person's life this week, right? I mean, I remember that calling with, that's me. And Isaiah 6:8, that's one of my favorite Bible verses. And God said, who shall I send? And Isaiah says, send me. Right? And that to me was, okay, this is where I'm at, right there. And so that started off my career, and as I moved in the Air Force and moved in my fire department, that to me, I'm hungry.
Yeah.
I'm hungry.
Let me touch on that real quick.
Sure.
I think about that scripture, and I think about the mission that, no matter where you are in the world, right? Just last week, I sat down with a friend of mine from France who's a firefighter, and we talked about, this industry on the global scale, right?
Right.
And at the end of the day, all of us have the same primary mission, which is to serve our community.
Right.
Right. And we are equipped with a skill set, high level of knowledge, right? And we go and we get continuing education and training and extrication and TRT, mountain rescues and hazmat, and there's all these different things that we learn how to do to become all hazards responders in our communities. And so I love that when you say, hey, send me. I am willing to risk life and limb, willing to expose myself to carcinogens, willing to expose my brain to all kinds of horrific visions that are indelibly etched into your body and into your soul forever. Well, I'm willing to do that. Why? Because it's an opportunity to serve in the community. And it's a very, I hate saying it because it feels kind of trite, but we go, it's a noble calling, right? But it's real, right? It's a real opportunity. And when we forget sometimes, we get a little bit jaded and a little bit callous, and we forget that we have a skill set that we get to apply in people's lives when they have no other option.
Yeah.
When you're there with that person whose soul is leaving their body, and you're just trying to hold back the dam, give them another chance if it's God's will, right? If it is going to happen, we're going to be the ones who are going to change that course. Right. And maybe it's not that. Maybe their time has come and they're gone. Right. Okay. But you know what? We're going to give them a fighting chance. And that's the one thing that I've always thought is I never wanted to be I never wanted my skills to be so weak, or to be the cause, rather, not to be weak, but to be the cause for us to not give our best effort.
No doubt.
Because I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't fast enough. I wasn't smart enough. I couldn't remember my drug calculations, whatever.
No doubt.
I never wanted to be that person. So I always wanted to be training and studying and preparing so that when the call came, I was prepared.
Yeah. When I had my spark, and we all had it, every fireman did.
Yeah.
Some lose it, and I can't be ignorant to that.
Yeah.
But when I had my spark, I kept blowing on it and adding fuel to it. And I think that is the best thing you can do for young firemen in any agency, any facet, any thread of our industry, even in the military or in the police department, law enforcement, is when they get that spark, keep them on it and feed it and feed it and feed it. And then keep giving them that reason to make it that day. Mm-hmm. Give them that reason to say, hey, look, I still want to be a fireman today. Because when people lose that spark, that's where you get those bad stories of the grumpy old man on the recliner, or you get those stories of the cranky police officer at the corner. And everybody can have a bad day. That's totally normal.
Yeah.
But feeding those sparks and making sure they understand the reason. When I started my first fire academy, when I was as an instructor, I did a Wagner County Fire Department, or a Wagner County Fire Academy, and I made every single person on the first day of that fire academy write down why you want to be a fireman. And I don't know whether or not they did this part or not, but I told them, I was like, keep this in your locker at work. Hang it up in your locker at work, because whenever you get that bad day of, man, I don't want to go to work today, look at that and remember when you wrote it and why you wrote it.
Yeah.
Because there's a reason all of us are here. There's a reason you want it. Whether you believe it to be, divine intervention, or whether you believe it to be just because I like the adrenaline of it. Whatever that case may be, whatever your personal reason is, take that and feed it. Because that's what's going to make you make an impact in somebody's life today. Yeah. And I think that's very important from my view. Yeah.
Are you familiar with Simon Sinek?
No.
So he's a speaker, and he talks about, he wrote a book called, I'm going to mess up the name of it. I think it's called What Is Your Why? Something like that. Anyways, he talks about that principle, right? Understanding your why for doing whatever, right? You can watch a Rocky movie and get pumped up and motivated, but that's not, motivation can be fleeting, when things get hard or uncomfortable, or you get an injury, or you develop PTSD or whatever. Like, suddenly it's not enough to be motivated. You got to have purpose. Right. And that comes from identifying what your personal why is, and then remembering that. That's really important. And that's a great lesson to teach folks, right? To write that down.
Write it down.
Write it down while it's fresh in your mind.
Right. Like, now is your time, because you have that spark today. Yeah. Write it down. Yeah. As many words as you want, as little words as you want. Yeah. Write it down. And if you keep it, and if you do look back on it one day, and that might be the day that you actually needed that little phrase. Yeah. And that might make a difference in somebody's life.
Yeah. So if you were to write that down, what's your why?
My why today?
Yeah. Or what was it in the beginning?
In the beginning I believe it was a calling. This is my David and Goliath, is the fire service. I truly believe that. Okay. I was born for this purpose. I was born to make a difference in somebody's life in my career. Yeah. Whether that be, somebody I ran on a few years ago, whether it's somebody I'm going to run on 10 years from now. I hope my career's that long, but there's a purpose. I'm here, and I want to be part of it, and I'm excited to be part of it. And I try to chase that. Like, tomorrow might be my reason for being here. And that's what I'm looking forward to, is finding that out. Yeah. So,
yeah. Mine has evolved a little bit, but when I first came on the job, before I came on the job, I was 17. I won't tell you the whole story because I've told it on here before, and I don't want to belabor it. But I ran into a house fire with a friend of mine, and we were not in a whole lot of risk, but we pulled this little girl out who was hiding. And in the years after that fire, the husband perished, and the mom, who was at the store at the time, for years sent Christmas cards to me, thanking me for saving her daughter. Now, knowing what I know now, that kid was in a totally safe place. She was hiding in the downstairs bathroom, far from the fire. But what I learned was, in that event, was two dumb teenagers were willing to act on behalf of another human being. Right. And that became what I wanted in life. Was I wanted to be of use. I wanted to be a servant. Right. And so for me, my why is wrapped up in knowing that this organization, the fire service at large, gives us the opportunity to serve other human beings. And so sometimes that is a smile and a wave in the grocery store. Right. Right. Sometimes that is, not to be too dramatic, but ripping people from the clutches of death. Right. Right. It's what we do sometimes. And, I have never in my 24 years as a professional firefighter pulled anybody from a fire. Haven't had the opportunity. Had lots and lots of fires, lots and lots of events, pulled people from wrecks and off mountains and all kinds of stuff. But haven't had that repeated experience. Now, I've done lots of amazing things and had lots of really cool experiences. So it's we look at this and go, wow, there's this going to rescue a little girl from a burning building. Well, I haven't done that again. And,
Yep.
And it evolves, right?
Yeah. But the cool thing about it, and we're given that opportunity every day, is every single day, firemen all across this country, yourself included, woke up every single day, went to the firehouse and said, today I'm willing to rescue a baby from a burning building.
Right.
And that, to me, that gives everybody purpose.
Right.
And that's what we're talking about, is the purpose.
Yes.
The why.
Right.
And it's incredible because it's inspiring. Thinking right now, 3, 4, 5 blocks from right here, there's a firehouse with 6, 7, 8 firemen in it waiting for that call.
Right.
And they're just sitting there waiting, and they're ready. And that's very inspiring to me. And it's cool being around those. And I love this industry because we're here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with people that we're sitting here.
Right.
I mean, the leaders of our industry.
Right.
And we're in a room full of people who are willing to do that exact same thing from all over the world.
Right.
And it's so inspiring for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. So let's be specific. We'll be crystal clear about what we're doing here. We sit on the IFSTA validation committees.
Yes.
Different committees, and validate the textbooks that our brethren and sisters utilize to educate themselves to become the providers that we would hope them to be, right?
Right.
So, and just for those who are unaware, what we do on the validation committee is technical writers edit and write the textbooks, and then subject matter experts, which I kind of choke on those words a little bit as I say that because I'm like, so suddenly I'm that guy. How'd that happen?
Yeah,
so,
not in this room.
The other people who are here
Yeah.
Provide that expertise by reading the material and validating it for accuracy and currency, et cetera, so that when you get that textbook in your fire academy or when you're studying for your next promotional exam, you'll have something that's relevant and accurate, hopefully. That's our objective. So, I think about that and think, man, like all these people who show up to this conference who are willing to participate in that process, it's an extension of what they came on this job to do.
Right.
So how do you realize your purpose? I'm going to jump way ahead on you here. As a fire chief, right, as an administrator, how do you realize that purpose?
Well, I mean, obviously my purpose is, I've always looked at the chain of command as, hey, as the medic on the truck, right? I impact one person on one call. As, the supervisor of 2 ambulances. Right. Now I can kind of have an impact on 2 people because each one's running on a different patient. Right. Crew chiefs or station captains or whoever, the more assets they get, the more rank they have, the more impact they're having on the community, the more they're able to kind of reach their own expertise out through the firemen below them. They can reach that. The 3-tier process, right? We talk about education, experience, and training as being a 3-legged stool, right? Those 3 pieces are what build good company officers. And that's kind of what I've kind of driven myself to achieving is a good, solid 3-legged stool and kind of trying to gain that level of experience through incidents and departments and, whatever else I can get. Education through, trying to get my next degree and next certification class and then training through in-house, right? And as I've grown through the ranks and grown through the departments, I've gotten to a point to where now as a fire chief, I can help those guys develop their 3-legged stools.
Mm-hmm. So say the 3 legs again: education, experience,
training. To me, that's what makes a good company officer. That's what makes a good chief officer. Education is the bookwork, the academia of the fire service, the theory, the going through and actually looking at data, right? The training is let's put some hands on hands lines and get out there and, practice the tools, forcible entry. Let's practice any facet that you're working on in the fire service. And then your experience just comes from, hey, look, I've seen this smoke pattern before, or hey, I've seen this. Let's deal with this a different way, or hey, I like what you're doing here. Let's continue to push it that way, right? That's just, kind of having the fifth sense or the sixth sense on the scenes, right? That's just comes from years of managing, right? And as you develop and as you promote and as you gain, different supervisory kind of duties, it's your job to start pushing that spark that they have and helping it grow. And I use those three stools for my own personal development of my individuals. And to me, I think that is almost as enjoyable for me as watching them train their firemen and them work a scene with their firemen and it be successful, right? I mean, those are kind of your plants, you're watering your plants out in the backyard and they're growing and growing and growing and they finally produce some really effective fruit that you can actually take in and eat, not the ones that are bug eaten and all that, right? But the good fruit, right? And you get to witness that. That to me is another impact that I can't explain how good that feels as you get to be a chief officer or a company officer and see your firemen that you've brought up in the fire service make huge impacts as they promote and as they develop. And that's a fantastic experience.
Yeah.
For me.
I think there's a lot of value in being able to extend your impact.
Right.
So it's, there's, those folks are out in the world serving the customer directly, and you have the ability to have an indirect impact on those folks vicariously through all the folks who are, who work for you or under you or with you, what have you.
Right.
And so that's such an important perspective to maintain. So many guys are like, oh, I would never want to be, in admin because now I'm not on the field anymore. I got to get off a fire truck. And I'm like, well, it's about, there's a certain level of preparedness and readiness that comes with that. And when you're ready to shift gears and take that step in that direction, you have to understand what you're getting. And from my perspective, it's almost like a second career, right? The first half of my career was very heavy operations and was direct contact with the customer. The second half of my career is supporting the men and women on the line. Right? And helping them be successful through training, through operational policy, through, support structures, and resources, et cetera.
Right.
And what a neat opportunity to be able to do that. And, I love your three pillars because to me, I always say KSH, or your knowledge, skills, and abilities.
Exactly.
Which to me, those are my three little pillars. Right. And I look at those kind of the same way. And they knit in with what you're talking about perfectly. So I just think that's such a fantastic mindset as an organizational leader. So let me shift gears on here a little bit and ask you another question. We talked a little bit about your time in the Air Force, but you mentioned that you had been on deployment recently.
Yes.
And I would love, you had a pretty unique experience that, a lot of folks who've served in the Air Force in crash rescue, like there was a narrow window of time and the experience that you had. And I would love for you to share as much as you're willing and able to share.
Well, we deployed. I deployed as the deputy fire chief to Qatar Air Base in Qatar, which is a pretty small little country. The World Cup's actually going to be there this year, starting in November. So it's the first time they've gotten to host that. But the downtown, we didn't get to see a whole lot of it because I was still kind of over there, kind of the back end of the second wave of COVID, right? So they were very, very restrictive because they had the Arab Cup coming out. But that is a very beautiful country. If you ever want to do an off-the-books cool country on like a vacation or deployment, I believe the city of Qatar, Qatar City is going to be a great place to visit someday. Same like Abu Dhabi and all that. But so the Qatar Air Base is one of the major air bases for the United States Air Force and other coalition partners. There's a big NATO presence. There's a lot going on there. But it's a massive base. It's probably long term they're going to have it kind of spin back up to kind of more of a forward, kind of like a forward operating base to where they can actually establish kind of a more of a permanent presence with permanent party rather than making it a deployment site. Well, over there, while I was over there, about 3 weeks into my deployment, the United States government pulled out of Afghanistan. While we were over there, we were watching it on the news just like everybody else in the world was. We didn't know what was coming. We didn't understand what was going on.
Which I feel like is a very common experience for people who are in the military.
Yeah, it's really cool. We got the news on, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's some things I could talk about, some things I think I can't. But I remember getting woken up at 2 a.m. for a specific call and saying, "Oh man, what is going on?" Deputy Fire Chief getting a phone call from dispatch saying, "Hey, you need to get out of bed. You need to come down to the airfield right now." So I head down there.
Had you at that point in your career ever been scrambled for anything other than
Well, I've had some, kind of flooding whenever I was over here, kind of in the Tulsa area, and then we've had, several tornadoes. Oklahoma's got some of that.
Well, no, I meant specifically when you're in the Air Force, or you meant in the Air Force, a Tinker at the Air
Force. No. As far as like woken up and told me I need to get to the airfield, no, not at that point.
Okay,
not at that point.
So clearly a unique experience.
Yeah, this was very unique.
Yeah,
and so we head down to the airfield. Woke the fire chief up as well. We were headed down. So we get down there, and there's a C-17 parked on the ramp, and there's just, tons of security forces around. We got the big guns out on top of the trucks. We got stuff, everything, and they said, "Hey, we think there might have been something happen on this plane. Like, there's something happened that might be hijacked or gunman or something."
Did you guys know where it had come from?
No, at this point, I don't think. We kind of speculated on kind of where it come from. We knew that there was a potential for some of the airlift stuff to kind of come our way at this point, but we didn't know. So we surround the airplane, and they got it stood up. We had the buses all come out. And remember, this is Qatar in July, and so I think it's hot in Oklahoma in July. It's a little different heat over there. We're looking at. It's probably about 2:00 in the morning at this time when we get the call. It's still 100 degrees outside.
Easy, yeah.
Yeah. And so we pull up, and this is supposed to be an easy deployment, right? This is supposed to be there's 2 swimming pools on this base. It was supposed to be hanging out, and it's an Air Force base.
That sounds like classic Air Force to me.
It is exactly. That's exactly. It's IUD Air Base, right? This is nothing crazy. So anyway, we show up, we get it circled around, and we said, "Hey, let's start offloading. Security forces in it. Fire department's got command." We established our fire trucks in the way so the airplane can't taxi. We didn't know what's going on. Pilots turned the engines off. Everything's shut down. Pilots saying they're staying in the cockpit. They're not coming out. Okay. And so finally they don't know what's behind the door from the cockpit because they have it shut, locked off. So they don't know what's behind them. So we open the side door of the C-17 and people start coming out. And it's people dressed in traditional Arab garments, right? Most of them don't have shoes on. Some people are carrying huge bags of stuff, like just backpacks full, duffel bags, whatever they had, all sorts of stuff. We're like, what's going on? And we start searching them. The police are starting to search them, and we're corralling them. We order some buses to come out because we start realizing how many people are coming out. And 6 hours later, people are still coming off this plane.
How many people can? Well, you said it. What did you say it was? A
C-17.
C-17. How many people can a C-17 carry?
Right, usually around 200.
Okay.
This one had 823 passengers on it.
Holy mackerel!
So 823 passengers on it. There was a lot of confusion on the ramp over there while they were trying to do this airlift, and this is kind of when the whole Afghanistan airlift thing kind of got taken over.
Use your imagination. You saw it on the news.
Yeah,
right?
And then so all that plane just took off and landed in Qatar, and this was our first kind of awakening of what was about to occur over the next 14 days.
Wow. So how many of those – well, carry on. Sorry. I got questions. But
yeah, and when they were coming off the plane, some people had everything that they'd owned in it. Like there was just bags of money, bags of jewelry, bags of – some people even tried to bring, some of the kind of – illicit substances that you can get in Afghanistan, right? Stuff like that they were going to sell for money or whatever, right? So anyway, we finally get all those people off, put them on a bus, send them to a hangar. And now we don't know what to do with those people. So the Air Force Base itself, Qatar, is trying to figure out what to do with a bunch of refugees from a country that we weren't even planning for. And this country doesn't necessarily know that we're doing this, right at this point. Now we don't know what we're doing. Well, after that, it just started happening quicker than anybody had ever imagined. It was C-17 would land, another 200 people. C-17 would land, another 200 people. All the other countries, they didn't know where to send them, but we were just shipping in C-17s to Afghanistan, shipping them out. The only place that anyone knew that we could land was our installation. And over the next 14 days, there were 62,000. I wish I had my statistics with me. I wish I have. I'll send you a sheet that you can look at. But there was 62,000 refugees came through our installation in a 2-week period.
Right. Where did you put them all?
Hangars.
Okay.
Warehouses, tents, and it was whatever we could build. We started recalling people from other installations whenever, and they were flying in on other planes, not C-17s, because all the C-17s probably from all over the world were dedicated just to go to Afghanistan and come to us. Eventually we got it to where they could ship them to Ramstein, I believe, and there was a couple other installations across the that side of the world that people that were accepting those refugees on the C-17s.
Wow.
But during this period of time, my installation brought in 62,000.
Yeah. So what were the things that your firefighters were doing? What was the work that you guys had to do?
My firefighters, during this period of time, we had 2 engines that we could run, or an engine and a tanker that we could run on the airfield to this part. We still had at Station 1, we had an engine and a tanker up there, and that basically was just dedicated to the whole rest of the installation. We basically dedicated my engine and my tanker and several of my crash trucks to just start running to all these airplanes, because we got to a point where we had received so many that we had filled up all the facilities and we had no more room. It was standing room only in a lot of these places with people that don't speak our language.
Yeah.
And they started shipping in State Department personnel to kind of do immigration and try to figure out how to deal with all that. And it was a huge, massive logistical nightmare.
Yeah.
And everybody there, I'm not saying anybody at that installation did the wrong thing. From the 3-star to the 1-star to my commanders in my squadron, my unit, my mission support group, fantastic leadership. Nothing would have been so successful on the back end of it if it wasn't for them and their leadership. But during this period of time, my engine was running calls so often, so much that we couldn't keep up, and the planes couldn't take the people and the passengers anywhere because there was nowhere to put them.
Right.
So now they'd be parked on the ramp for 7 or 8 hours in 140-degree heat with no water, with no food. They haven't eaten or sleeping in 4 days. These people are covered in, sewer water.
Yeah, not to mention the hygiene issues that come along with this, having so many people.
Well, they were using the bathroom on the floor of the C-17. I mean, there's no bathroom.
Yeah.
It was just filthy. And as soon as we'd offload a C-17, they'd refuel it, spray it out, and then ship it off again to go get more. And it was nonstop, just constant. And a lot of those C-17s, not only were we getting the heat emergencies, but some of these patients had gunshot victims. We had blast injuries. We had trauma victims, broken arms. We had children who are on the wrong plane than their parents, or their parents didn't show up because they'd been hurt or injured
separated
over there
somehow.
in Afghanistan, or you don't know where a lot of this stuff was. And we were having, translation problems, and there was people from, coming on these planes. It wasn't just Afghans. There were some people from, Korea just who were on vacation there, I guess, or British reporters getting on the airplanes, or it was just people from all over the world and Afghanistan that were getting on these C-17s, getting shipped to a whole different country, and no one knew what to do or how to deal with it. And 62,000 is a lot of people, right? I mean, that fills up a college stadium. I mean, I don't know how to logistically think about that. And we had to think about that quickly, because now our installation's running out of water. Now our installation's running out of food. The Air Force didn't have enough MREs to give the people. And a lot of them can't eat the MREs because religious requirements, or say they were, kosher or whatever, right? We just didn't have the meals that they would be able to use. And so there was actually a point in time where my civil engineering squadron was trying to figure out how to get it done, but we were hours away from running out of water for the entire installation. Like, no one was going to have any drinking water.
Yeah.
And it's 140 degrees in the third week of July.
It's interesting. So you have this humanitarian crisis, and then, folks being poured into an installation that doesn't have the capacity to manage a humanitarian issue, right? So now you have to work on the logistics and the support for that. And I'm at a loss. It's mind numbing,
right?
So what a nightmare.
Yeah, and there's nowhere to call for mutual aid, and there's nowhere to call. You can't call for automatic aid.
That's a good point.
And I remember we're standing there, and I'm like, "Hey, we got to set up a medical clinic. Hey, we got to do all this." And the full bird colonel looked at me and the fire chief and said, "No one's coming." Yeah. They just looked me in the eye, and me and the chief looked at each other and said, "You know what? You're right. No one's coming. Like we need to set up a medical clinic here, but we already got another hospital set up. We already stood up a field hospital, and there's no more medics to staff it." And so we were like, all right, 2 firemen, get over here. So then we switched from running 24-hour shifts, which my firemen for the most of the deployments in typical Air Force is 24 on, 24 off. We switched to 12s. And so that would give our guys at least a little bit of relief because 24 hours on, they're staying up 24 hours because they were running calls nonstop.
Couldn't stand up 24s every
time. They couldn't because they couldn't go to sleep the next day and sleep. And so we switched it to 12s and said, your nights, your days. And my A shift and B shift, they managed it and they saved it. In all honesty, 62,000 people. There was a couple incidents where some people passed away not on our installation. But 62,000 people came through this and not a single loss of life. Civilian, refugee, any of it. Military, none of it. And in my installation. Yeah. Right? And I credit that completely to my guys who were there. And when you talk about an inspirational moment, right? I had 18-year-old kids, graduated in May of 2020, joined the Air Force, finally got their ticket to go to the Air Force station or their Air Force base, got there in March 2021. They showed up, landed in Qatar, July 2021.
Went right to the pool.
Right to the pool, a couple days, right? And then immediately dealt with this. Yeah. And if I didn't have the team that I had over there, it's incredible watching an 18-year-old kid stand up and deal with some of the most catastrophic things I've ever dealt with in my entire career. Yeah. And they met that challenge and blew it out of the water. This is their first real-world life experience.
Yeah, they're going to be real disappointed in the rest of their life. Nothing's going to be as exciting.
No, and that was probably the most exciting 2 weeks of my entire life was being able to witness. Yeah, I mean, it was to its core pure humanity. Yeah, from in an inhumane situation. Right. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds on any of that, but it was pure humanity in the most inhumane situation I've ever seen.
Yeah. Well, think about any disaster, right? I would chalk this up as a disaster. It was a disastrous extrication from Afghanistan, and by all accounts, it was a shitstorm. And you guys were tasked with providing, expanding your capacity to absorb the impact of this incident. And man, I'm proud of you guys for towing that line, man. What an amazing accomplishment. And, it causes me to think what are the lessons you take from that? And now you bring that home to your community and go, okay, how do I, what are the things that you're going to deal with here? Natural disasters, right? In Oklahoma, like all kinds of different types of weather systems that you deal with. And you could have something, maybe not the same scale, but certainly a community disaster where you have to expand your capacity. And there's a little Instagram, there's a company called 30 Seconds Out. And they make a patch that says, no one is coming, it's up to us. Right. And I love that because when you said that earlier, I was like, that's exactly right. We have to maintain that mindset that we are the last stop. And, there's no responders that are coming to, be our emergency response. We are the response. Right. So, what does it take to be prepared for that? Right. So for you, when you think about like the big, you talked about humanitarianism and the ability to expand and absorb that impact and the leverage of leveraging the capacity of your people and their ability to step up. But what are some of the other, if any, lessons that you took away from that? that you're going to apply in the rest of your career and in your life?
Innovation. Just to me, pure innovation. Without the outside of the box, hey, I don't care what the rules say, it needs to get done right now. Rules, without those innovative ideas, people would have died, honestly. There was a point where our guys were just running ragged. Our engine, it's a desert fire truck. The maintenance on it, at best, if I need a belt, it's going to be 3-6 weeks. We didn't have the ability to say, hey, this is our only truck. What we did was we got with vehicle maintenance, says, hey, give us every single little white pickup truck you got, Toyota Hilux style. And I started putting fire trucks and EMTs and medics, and we called PJs over and said, hey, get in this truck. I need you running medical calls. Just drive over to that, pick up whoever's sick, drive back and drop them off in this tent. We'll put medics in here. And so we would put 2 medics in a tent, and they would drive out there in a pickup truck, pick up patients, bring them back. Drive out there to the next airplane, pick them up, bring them back. They were running so many calls, we had to find how are we going to fuel them, right? So we'd park it and just give them a new truck, and someone else would take that to go fuel it, right? And it was just whatever staffing needs we could get figured out. There was a point in time where the guys didn't have showers. And so Chief, and he would take some of the other people from other squadrons who weren't really doing anything like finance or whatever, right?
Those guys.
Yeah. They don't have like an actual mission that they were on at that point in time. Or maybe somebody who was, kind of down, didn't have anything else going on or off duty or whatever, volunteers. Right. And
they could drive a truck.
Yeah. Well, we would take the fire truck over and use some of our extra relief fire trucks to use it as kind of a shower so that they could have baths. Now, we would stand on top of a Connex box and kind of spray it in a fan. So we didn't take too many pictures of it because it looked like you're hosing down a bunch of, refugees. But that's essentially what we're doing is doing like a rain down on top of them to where they can actually give them some soap, and people would, straight up shower over there. And then we set up a women's station with women only who were doing that. And those innovative tactics were just providing just a little bit more humanity to those people who are truly having the absolute worst experience of their life. They've just given everything up. They've lost everything. And that's another thing that I've learned in my life is it doesn't matter how bad of a day you're having. Someone's got it worse. And they're still smiling. They've given up everything they've ever known. And those kids are having the day of their lives right now, kicking that little soccer can back and forth that they made. Right. And just seeing the smiles on their faces and seeing the parents kind of with their relief of getting out of that terrible situation. I mean, it made your day.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of volunteer opportunities there, but our guys would come up with innovative ways every single day on, hey, let's do it this way better or different. Right. And those listening to your guys and their innovation, because they're the boots on the ground. Hey, we can't sustain this fire engine. It's going to break. Right. All right, well, Chief and I'll come up with a plan. Took us about 3 hours, figured a plan out. Here's the new policy. We're starting immediately, right? Here's 3 fire trucks. We stole them from vehicle maintenance, right? And so it just happened that easy. And all it's got to do is start off with a little idea.
Yeah.
And I credit all that to everybody down there who was boots on the ground in Qatar between the months of July 2021 and March 2022. Those guys are true American heroes, as well as everybody else on that installation. I mean, it was flawless from AFSTA commander down. It was a flawless response.
Well, I imagine you have a lot of people who are being flexible and willing to do unusual things. You said get outside the box. That's exactly right.
Right.
Policy has to go in the can because there is not a policy for this.
Right.
So, you got to adapt.
Right.
That's beautiful. I love that. It's you said something too. You said listening to the boots on the ground. I think it's really important as an organizational leader or leader at any level, frankly, to listen to the people who have operational context and figure out what their needs are. Right. They have the most intimate knowledge of what's happening in an operation. So you got to listen to what they're saying. And you've got to, you got to build trust and be able to have those good conversations. But that's a really important thing. You got to listen to your people.
Sure.
Because they have good forward knowledge of what's happening. So
yeah, absolutely.
And they're smart.
They are. I mean, they know how to fix it.
Yeah.
They just got to tell you.
Yeah.
And if you have to have that relationship of it's hard to get that bridge gap, right? I mean, a lot of people and a lot of departments run it like chief walks in the room, nobody talk to him. Right. But you got to have that relationship with your leaders and your subordinates to where if there's a good idea out there, one way or another, you got to put it on the table and you got to listen.
100%.
I mean, it's just got to be out there.
Yeah. And I'll add that you have to create an environment that fosters that. Right. It starts by letting people talk, giving them the opportunity to share their ideas, regardless of what you think. You are not the smartest person in the room.
No.
And you're surrounded by people who are fully intelligent. You might be responsible for executing, but you're surrounded by lots of smart people, and you got to listen to them and give them an environment to speak.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They make sure they trust.
Yeah. Get that environment.
Build the trust so that they feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and ideas, because you're going to get gold when you let that happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you some. We're going to start pulling this toward a close here. I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions. Okay. What's one thing that you believe that other people think is crazy?
I believe that other people think I'm crazy.
Well, they don't think you're crazy. What's an idea or a thought you have that other people might think is crazy?
I think everybody here in this industry, they're here for a purpose, right? And they're here for a calling. And such as the chaplain said in Qatar, such a time as this. Right, that's a verse out of Esther. Can't quote the actual chapter or verse, but out of Esther.
Google it.
Yeah,
it'll come up.
Yeah, such a time as this, right? And that's beautiful to me. That is when you find your moment, your purpose. Such a time as this. That's why you're here.
All right. Well, I don't think that's crazy. I think that's wonderful.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So somebody else might. So let me ask you this: what's a piece of advice that you've been given that is the worst piece of advice you've ever been given?
Worst piece?
Just the worst piece.
Oh, man, I think I bottled that up. I don't know. Worst piece of advice.
All right, ponder on that. Give me, what's the best
Use the fog nozzle.
What's the best? There it is. The truth comes out right to the surface. Okay, what's the best piece of advice you've been given?
Spark that fire, man. Spark that fire and follow it. You can't chase a dream if you don't chase it. And, that to me is just important.
All right. I love that. All right. Last thing. So this podcast is called Fireground Fitness Podcast. Mm-hmm. So what does it mean to you to be Fireground Fit?
Fireground Fit's well-rounded. I mean, you got to be well-rounded. Your overall health, just mental health, behavioral health, spiritual health, family health. You got to be keeping all that well balanced. I mean, if you can't go home and be at home, then you can't come to work and be at work. I mean, that to me is you have to have a good family. Or a good family lifestyle, or build some kind of home for yourself, whatever that looks like. I'm not trying to say one looks better than the other, but you have to have a good support group outside of work just as well as you have a good support group inside of work. And then you got to take care of your physical fitness, your, nutrition, eat right, don't drink too much. I mean, it's okay to have a couple here and there, but you got to keep it in moderation and just take care of your business. Whatever your business is, you define it and take care of it, right? That to me is Fireground Fitness. A lot of people talk about, let's lift the big weights, let's fight gravity, right? Let's do the things, but to me, it's well-rounded firemen are the best firemen. One who can take care of home, take care of themselves, and take care of their work. That's all you need, right there.
I love it. Well, Aaron, thank you for spending some time and sharing your thoughts and sharing some of your experiences and lessons learned. We are all better for it, man. I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Rain. It was a pleasure being here.
That's all we have for today, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're enjoying this podcast, get on over to Apple Podcasts, rate and review the podcast. That helps other folks find their way here and provide some valuable feedback. Also, if you have some thoughts or ideas you want to share, please feel free to reach out. I can be found at raingray@firegroundfitness.com. Further, take the lessons and the things that you learned while listening to this podcast, find a way to weave them into your life. Look for ways to make yourself better, stronger, faster, more improved, healthier. Improve your KSAs. Go on out there and get after it.